Hi, everybody. We'll be starting our webinar in just a second. People are joining, and as Zoom lets people in, we'll wait a few minutes so that everyone can get settled in. Okay. We have 17 attendees now. We have 26 registered, but I think we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Caroline Wolf, and welcome to our April edition of Libraries Connecting Texas monthly webinar. We're really excited to see that so many people are attending, and we're looking forward to giving you information on how to move forward beginning July 1st. We had a great start of the 2021 funding year in Wave 1. We had a lot of people who were funded. So I'm going to give a summary of the LCT funding, just a high level, and soon I'm going to be sending out actually a report that shows the comparison of all the years of the program so that you can see just how far the Texas libraries have come through the Libraries Connecting Texas program since we started in 2018. We will have Ashley talking about the invoicing process. Some of you have not completed the invoicing process from 2019, and others of you will need to start filing theirs for 2020. So we're going to go over that. And Brandi's going to talk about PIA and transition of service. Most of you have been through the PIA program already, the review of the applications, because I think 95% of the applications for LCT were funded in the first wave. So just a few of you will have PIA to continue, and then you'll talk about transition of services to your new service. And then Kyle is going to go over the Form 486, which is the form that's completed after you're funded, and then the next steps. And then Jenny's going to talk about the Emergency Connectivity Fund, which is a new federal program that has been passed, and it's a good opportunity to connect the people who are not able to connect to the internet right now. So we're looking forward to giving you some more information about that. So let's move forward. So $1.3 million was funded to LCT libraries in the first wave of 2021. I am so happy for all of you. That's just such great news, and it's such a great start to the 2021 funding year, as I said. So $4.8 million in pre-discount funding went from to LCT libraries from 2018 to 2020. So you can tack on another 1.3 to that for the whole program. So right now we're looking at about an average bandwidth of 619 megabits per second. I can't wait to send you the report to show how much that number has grown in the past 3 years. The average cost per megabit is $3.78. That megabit is so I don't think anybody is using 1 megabit anymore, but at the beginning there were people who were using 1 megabit, and most of you have increased your bandwidth a lot during the past few years. The average monthly cost for Category 1 services for LCT participants is $1,048.51. That's pre-discount. So if you have a 90% discount, that's showing that you have you're not going to have to pay a whole lot for your increased bandwidth. So that's a good thing. So I think we're ready to hand it over to the invoicing process.
Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Brown, and I'm going to be talking to you about the fun part, invoicing and getting your money back from USAC. So right now we're fixing to start ramping up in July when your services end June 30th, you want to make sure you can start filing for reimbursement. There's two ways to do that. The service provider does it as a discount, or you need to do it. And that is called a Billed Entity Applicant Reimbursement Form, or as we call it, a BARE. And it's filed directly to USAC for you to receive your discounted amount. So if you need to file a BARE, what that means is that you've paid your service provider bills every month in full. You have proof of payment and you have your invoice to show that if you paid $100, your proof of payment shows that your bill was $100, you paid $100. And you need that for all 12 months of service. And then your library will be reimbursed for the discount from USAC. So if you're an 80% discount level and you submit your invoice for $100, you're going to get $80 back because you'll receive 80% of the funding you paid in for that specific FRN. Okay, all invoices that need to be submitted to USAC, they must be submitted no later than 120 days after the last date of service, or the last 120 days after your Form 486 notification letter, whichever one's later. Usually or generally, the deadline for recurring services, which is going to be your bandwidth, your internet access, or your WAN connectivity, falls around on October the 28th, which should be the 120 days from June 30th, which should be the last date to receive service for recurring charges. Non-recurring services are a little different, and those are going to be your internal connections, or what we call Category 2. And those services are actually allowed to be installed up until September 30th. So the invoicing for that should occur, the last date for that is January the 28th of that following year. Okay, so what I said earlier about having two different ways to file, you still want to, and this isn't on here, but you still want to look at your bills. Even if your bills have been discounted, you still want to try and, at this point, take a look to make sure you've received the discounts you were supposed to be receiving the last 12 months. And if there's a discrepancy in that, you'll want to reach out to the provider to make sure that's cleared up before the end of the funding year, just to make sure that you're getting credit for everything that you should be. And then you'll need to invoice. The time frame is your invoices that began July 1 of 2020 and that should end by June 30th of 2021. You may not actually pay that June 30th bill until July of 21. So you just want to make sure that you've paid the last bill from June 30th. If you have any questions or need any help, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us on the LCT group. We'd be more than happy to help you to look at your invoices, walk you through what should be or shouldn't be discounted. And then there are just a few libraries that are still in need to file their 2019 invoices, and that's from July 1 of 19 to June 30 of 2020. And the reason that you actually have time for that is because there was a one-year extension for that deadline. So if you notice that you haven't received your reimbursement for last year's E-rate, you may want to just double check to see that a BARE has been filed. And if you need help with that as well, please let us know.
One quick thing before
Yes,
we move on to the next thing. I also want to let you know that you don't have to file your BARE annually. You can file your BARE quarterly or monthly or semi-annually. However it works for you. Most people will file at the end of the year just because it's easier. But if you need to file it earlier than that, you can file more often. But you just the big thing is that you need to file after you've paid your bills. So, for instance, if you're filing a quarterly BARE, you can wait until July, August, September. At the end of September, you can file your BARE after you pay your September bill, and so on. So that's one of the things that I wanted to let you know about. The other thing is, if you are a new LCT participant, you're just starting out, if you are going to be using the BARE process and you've never used the Bear process before, there are a couple of things that you will have to do before you're able to file the Bear. One is that you'll need to file a form called the Form 498, and the other is you're going to have to get a Bear pin. So we will be sending out more information about that, but if you need to file a Bear now, or if you know you're going to be filing Bears for 2021, it's not a bad idea to start getting ready to do that. And if you were new last year and you haven't filed your discounts for last year, really it's time to get those two forms started if you have to file a Bear. So just my 2 cents, ready to move on to PIA.
Thank you, Caroline.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brandi, and I am going to talk to you a little bit about PIA inquiries. And this, Ashley was talking about funding years 2019 and 2020 when it comes to invoicing. And I'm jumping forward into the funding year we're in now, the one that we've just filed your 471 to request funding. Like Caroline said, most applicants have received a funding commitment decision letter in wave 1 last week. But if you did not receive an FCDL in that wave, there's a chance that you could still receive PIA inquiries. If USAC has any questions or requires any kind of clarification on your application, you'll receive a PIA review. That will come to you via email, and there will be a link that you can click on in the email to view what questions or additional documentation that the PIA team needs. If you have questions or need help in sending a response, you can reach out to one of the LCT team members, and we're happy to help you with that. A reminder is there's a little, the time to respond is limited. It's a 15-day response. So the faster you reply, the faster you're going to get funded. So it's important that you make that a priority if you do receive a PIA inquiry. If you do not receive any outreach from the PIA team, then you don't need to take any additional action. You can just wait for your FCDL. The next thing we're going to talk about is transition of services. And the first thing that I want to touch on is if you are switching to a new internet service provider, you want to make sure that you are communicating both with your new provider and with your outgoing provider. I would recommend taking a look at your current contract to make sure you understand how much notice you need to give to that current provider to let them know that you're switching services effective July 1st. So you'll want to take a look at that, and if for some reason you're having trouble finding that information, of course, we're happy to help with that too. You'll want to contact your new provider to make sure services are on target to begin July 1st, and then you'll want to make sure you reach out again to your outgoing provider after the new services begin to make sure the services have been terminated. That way you're not getting double billed for your services.
One other thing I would add, Brandi, is for 2021, for funding year 2021, which is what this slide is addressing, July 1st, 2021, if you want discounted billing, if you're used to that, or if you just want to switch to that, you're going to need to let your service provider know that's what you want set up come July 1. Okay,
Absolutely.
So just be sure you contact them and request that.
And another thing that I wanted to add is a couple of service providers. I know AT&T is one, and I believe Windstream is another. There may be others. Send you an email when you first, some of them send it when they first see that you file a Form 471, others when you get funded. There's an automated email that's generated, and they send you a form that you have to complete. If you want discounted billing, you have to submit that form to them so that they will apply discounts to your bill. It's very important that you look for that email if you wanted discounted billing and you're using AT&T and Windstream. And I think we can probably put together a list of the ones we know about. I'm sure we can't give you an exhaustive list, but I know for sure that AT&T is one of them. And they send you a link. You go to an online link and fill out information about the services that you want discounted. And once you do that, then you're set. You can do that now, or you can do that when you get funded if you haven't been funded yet. But it's an important part of getting your discounts applied to your bill. So
that's a really good point, Caroline, and I'm sure Kyle's going to cover that as far as the 486, and that's, you know, also a requirement to receive that discounted billing. So that's something that Kyle's going to cover here in a few minutes.
One more thing, Ed has a question, and I'm going to go ahead and answer it real quick. He wants to know if billing has to be the first through the end of the month, and it doesn't. There's no requirement that the bill has to be dated a certain date. You just need to decide, you know, for instance, when you're starting the invoicing process, what date that is. So if you're going to start with your July bill, whatever the July 15th bill, say if it's the 15th that you get your bill, and then make sure you're just consistent in how you're applying that rule to the 12 months of service that you're invoicing. So it doesn't really matter what date of the month it is, just you decide which one is your July bill, and then only invoice for the months that you've actually paid, and give them the amount that you've paid. You can't submit a bear for what you were funded. You have to submit a bear for what you were billed and what you're paid. So we have a template that we send out that you can use, and you can write, you know, just type in what your actual bill amount was, remove anything that's ineligible, and then use that result as your non-discounted share, and then apply the discounts. When you file a bear, it actually computes the discounted amount for you based on what you were awarded, but you have to submit the correct amount to be successful. And again, if you need any help with that, we are here to help you, and we'll send you specific instructions on how to do it, but also we'll walk you through the process.
Awesome. Thank you, Caroline. The other part of transitioning your services is you want to pay attention to if it's a new service provider, the first bill. If it's your current service provider and you're just upgrading bandwidth, you still want to pay attention. Take a look at that first bill that you receive. Hopefully it's your July bill. Just make sure that the bandwidth has been changed, that the pricing matches your contract, which matches what we've requested on the Form 471, and because you don't want to catch that 6 months into the funding year, and then we have to work with the service provider to correct the mistake. So it's best just to take a look at that first bill and make sure everything coincides with what you filed for. And then I'm going to pass it to Kyle.
Thank you, Brandi. I'm Kyle. I'm going to speak to you now on the Form 486 and the requirements for the Form 486, in addition to the next steps that will follow the Form 486. So in order to file and certify the Form 486, the first thing that you're going to need to do is make sure that your library is Children's Internet Protection Act compliant, SIPA. Now, if you filed in the past and have filed in past years and were SIPA compliant for those years, you should likely still be SIPA compliant, but you will want to make sure that you have documentation on file for yourself and in your records for the components of that SIPA compliance, including an internet safety policy. This will be one of the requirements, and that should include a technology protection measure, which either filters or blocks internet access for the purposes of the SIPA requirements. In addition to the third requirement, which is public notice and hearing or meeting. So the authority responsible for the administration of the library should put out reasonable public notice, possibly in a newspaper or online for a hearing or meeting, which will address the proposed technology measure in addition to the internet safety policy. And if you don't have this on file, you can hold a new public hearing or meeting to make sure that you have that documentation on file. Even if you were SEPA compliant in the previous year, it will just be important to have each of these requirements documented and your compliance with them.
Thank you, Kyle. Henry has actually raised his hand, and I suspect he wants to talk about SIPA. So, Henry, do you want to talk? I'm going to allow you to talk, so you can unmute yourself if you're muted. Henry, you're muted.
Kathy also has her hand up.
I'll allow Kathy to talk now so that she can ask the question while we're waiting for Henry. So Kathy, do you want to unmute and ask a question? Kathy?
And while we're waiting for Kathy, Amber did ask a question, Kyle.
Okay.
And Caroline, as long as we have the documentation, do we need to do anything else in regards to being SIPA compliant?
As long as you've documented all of those things, you should be good. You just have to have one meeting, and many of you had a meeting, but the important thing is that you have documentation of the meeting. It's kind of like if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? If you have a meeting and you don't have documentation of it, then to the FCC that didn't happen. So just make sure that you do have that on record. And it looks like Henry has unmuted himself. So Henry, do you want to speak?
Sure. I just had to look away. Could you repeat the statement of what I should speak about? I'm sorry.
Oh, you had raised your hand.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I'm so sorry. Well, anyway, SIPA.
You wanted to talk about SIPA because it was just around the time that SIPA came up, and I thought you were just
that makes sense. Well, hi, everybody. No, I do have, SIPA. If you've got extra questions, I am available. If you don't know me, I'm the state E-rate coordinator, library technology consultant at the Texas State Library, and SIPA is definitely one of my areas. So I guess I must have just unconsciously raised my hand to speak there. So yeah, anyway.
So thanks, Henry. And Kathy's question is a really good one. And I will tell you what we did at our library when I was a librarian and what a lot of libraries do. The public meeting can just be your regular board meeting, and that you put it on the agenda. You've got your agenda advertised anyway. You don't have to have a special meeting that's dedicated specifically to discussing your internet safety policy. You just have to put it on the agenda, keep a copy of the agenda, make sure that you have a record that it happened by saving the minutes from the board meeting. But you don't have to have a special SIPA meeting to meet the requirement of the public meeting. You just do have to make sure that you document your filtering device. You have to filter images that are basically illegal anyway, pornographic images that are considered harmful to minors, and the library really sets the tone for that. And you use your whatever your community you know your community well, so that's up to the library as to what litmus test that you use to decide what's going to be filtered and what's not going to be filtered. and then the internet safety policy that includes the technology protection measure. You want your internet safety policy to mention that you're going to filter and how you're going to address services to minors. So again, Henry has great information on the Texas State Library and Archives webpage. We do provide that in some of our information that we send out, especially with the Form 486 directions. So, so if you're a privately owned public library, so if I'm not sure, Kathy, about the whether or not you're required to have a public meeting based on the type of library you are, but you do need to have a public meeting for the for the SIPA part. So I guess if you don't normally have public board meetings, then that would be one that you would probably want to have as a public meeting. And so you would just put it on the bulletin board or on your web page and say that you're going to be having this meeting, and then just make sure that you keep track of that the fact that you did it. So, any other questions about SIPA before we move on? Okay, let's move on.
Okay, so it's going to be important to complete these steps for SIPA certification prior to filing the Form 486. If you have not achieved SIPA compliance already, because the Form 486 will do two things. It will certify compliance with the Children's Internet Protection Act, in addition to notifying USAC the start date for the services. Typically, this is going to be July 1st of 2021 for the funding year 2021. And so it's typically going to be that first day of the funding year on July 1st. If your services are starting at a later date, then that would be the date for that notification on the Form 486. Once you have received the FCDL, the Funding Commitment Decision Letter, we can help you prepare the Form 486, but I would say take a look at the instructions that we have sent out with step-by-step guide on preparing the Form 486. It's a fairly short form, and essentially you're just identifying the FRNs, the funding the FRNs on the Form 471 that have been committed. You're identifying those on the Form 486, and then confirming the start date in addition to confirming your SIPA status. So if you need help with that, please let us know and we can help walk you through those steps. But I would invite you to try it, log into Epic, and see if you can follow those steps to file it, because it's a fairly short form, and you should have a better idea of your SIPA compliance than we do. And so if you need any help, do reach out with that, though. It is important, as Brandi said earlier, to get this filed and certified sooner than later, especially if you are going to be invoiced via the SPI mode, the service provider invoice mode, because they are not going to be able to invoice SPI until the Form 486 is certified. So typically it's just going to be better to file the Form 486 as soon as you are SIPA compliant and as soon as you have received the FCDL.
One more thing to add about the certification of the Form 486 Sometimes, especially with people who are brand new to the program, we find that the Form 486 certifications can be confusing to people. So please do read those certifications carefully. If this is the first year you're participating in the program ever, and we do have some people who are participating in the program for the very first time, you actually have a grace period to become compliant if you are not currently compliant. If you have been filing for years, or if you were ever funded for internet access or internal connections in the past, then you have to be SIPA compliant. If you check the wrong box during the certification, it could hold up your Form 486. So do read the certifications. If you're not sure which box you should check, always ask. It's a lot easier for us to help you before you file the Form 486. And than it is afterwards. Of course, it's usually just answering a question and recertifying through a review process. If you do check the wrong box, so it's not going to completely kick you out of the E-rate program or anything like that. But if you try ahead of time to make sure you're certifying correctly, it just makes the process go more smoothly. And Kathy asked about suggestions about what libraries use for filtering. That's a good question for Henry, Kathy. And it says that she thinks that she may be paying too much for her filters. So that's definitely something that you should talk to Henry about. He's a technology consultant at the State Library, and he's very knowledgeable about that subject. So do call Henry or send him an email about that. Okay, I'm done talking.
All right, I'm going to talk to you about the Emergency Connectivity Fund, which is a new pot of money that the another stimulus pot of money that is part of the American Rescue Plan. It does include a $7.1 billion allocation for E-rate funding to support off-campus use of broadband internet access. So this does apply to libraries. It is a reimbursement of 100% of what you qualify for. And that can include internet, Wi-Fi hotspots, modems or routers, or some mechanism of getting connectivity off the library grounds to remote learners, and the end user devices or the connected devices, which has traditionally not been E-rate eligible. And so actually off campus has not been E-rate eligible. So this is something pretty new and unprecedented. So we are encouraging everyone to consider this funding opportunity. If you have any of your patrons who are using service or are learning remotely and need services like this, this is something that you may want to look into. This is new since we talked last time. We did bring it up in February, but we've gotten more information on this plan recently, and they do propose to make hotspots eligible for bookmobiles. So if any of you have bookmobiles, that may be something you want to look into. The public notice has been silent on the what's eligible end user devices in the bookmobile. So we will know something by May 10th, no later than May 10th, on the order and what the rules are. But they did have a comment period, which the original comment period ended April 5th. And so these are some of the questions that came out of that original comment period from stakeholders that responded to the FCC. And a lot of people are wondering, well, how is everybody going to use the funds, and how is it going to be allocated? So there may be a cap per applicant for this. We're hoping there is. how far back is it effective for reimbursement? So I think the pandemic was effective January 20th of 2020. So is it going to go back that far, and will it reimburse the equipment or the connected devices that libraries and school districts already spent? Are there going to be competitive bidding requirements? We're not sure. There's a lot of people requesting that they waive the competitive bidding or the form requirement of Form 470 and just rely on local and state policy with that in regards to purchasing. And then just broader product and service eligibility, what's involved in this funding. And we're not real sure. We're hoping to see some of these items on here. So some have talked about LTE networks, cybersecurity, which is going to be a big deal if you have remote learners, SIPA requirements, what do those look like? And then whether or not they can do discounted billing, or if you'll just have to do bare, just flat reimbursement. So anyway, we're expecting a lot of these answers no later than May 10th, which is when we expect the order to come out. And so we will stay close to this and let you guys know in our May webinar what the rules are and how you can go about asking and requesting and receiving this funding.
Just to add to what Ginnie had to say, it's probably going to be something that's going to go through the EPC portal, and it will, so it'll be something that you're familiar with. I'm not sure how many. I know that there are a lot of very rural libraries that are members of LCT. So it's possible that you've already spent money on hotspots or air cards that you can check out to people or things like that. Those could be reimbursed retroactively, so do pay attention to this. And also, we're going to be saying more about it. We've talked about it in some of our newsletters. We'll continue to talk about it in the newsletters moving forward and as we get more information. And if you're interested, that you can go to the FCC website and read some of the comments and make your own reply comments if that's something that you're passionate about. If that's something you think you might want to do, let us know. We can direct you to how to do it. Henry is also a good contact for that.
Thanks, Caroline. I was going to mention that. And the deadline for reply comments that Caroline just mentioned is tomorrow, April 23rd. So you have until the end of this week to do that. Any other questions that we can answer for you? Emergency connectivity or anything else we've talked about? Okay, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Caroline.
Thanks, Ginnie. So thank you all for attending our April webinar. We're really excited to see so many people. And we did record this. We are going to put it on our YouTube channel. If you know anyone who is at the Texas Library Association conference and maybe wasn't able to attend, please pass the word along that we are going to, as usual, post it on our YouTube channel. And stay tuned for more information about the Emergency Connectivity Fund. If you look on this slide, there is a link that goes to the Texas State Library's SIPA information. So that is something that you can access. So we can make these slides available if anyone thinks that that might be helpful. So just let us know and we can send you the slides. Thanks so much for being here, and we will see you next month. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.